This is masterpiece, and though it's spelled this way, it also refers to my artistic self.
Oh, God.
Just so I'm not wasting any time, if you would like to skip this introduction, just skip ahead to about the 7-minute 30 mark, and you'll get what you came for.
Is he just gonna promote his art? Let's see his art.
As long as I can remember, I have had an above average ability to imagine details of objects, faces, or events in great detail.
Humble brag.
I have also had the ability to render what is inside my mind onto paper or canvas for the public to see.
Look, I'm not saying this guy isn't talented, but, like, it's a little self-important to talk about yourself this way, right?
When
A lot of people are talented artists.
I was 6, my art was published in my regional school board's pamphlet under the headings of the arts. I was always better than, or on par with, my school art teachers and realized I needed advanced lessons if I was going to truly learn anything.
Yeah, that's a cool painting. It's great.
I have won speed painting competitions and have had paintings hung in a few town halls around my way. But I don't say this to toot my own horn, but to legitimize and bring another aspect to this flat earth movement. And that's what I'm calling the APFE, the artist's perspective on flat earth.
Okay, your art ability, well, it is great. That's a really great painting. It's cool. It's kind of like a kid, but there's space and it's all kinds of colorful. That's fantastic. Has nothing to do with what the shape of the earth is, though.
As an advanced arts student, we are shared information that is not given to the standard intellectual or predominantly left-brained population.
This
We
is
are
like some weirdly... You ever seen the subreddit, I am very smart? This is like that, but it's like, I am very artsy. I'm so right-brained. Take this, you logical jerks. I can visualize things with my brain meats.
Taught to see, and not only that, but how to reproduce what we see so that when it's gone, we can reproduce it and capture its likeness without...
Daddy Sume says, does this count as expert giving an opinion outside their field of expertise? You're goddamn right it does. Yes, I would say for sure.
it physically being there. For example, we as art students need to observe a piece of folded cloth or a nude figure in order to accurately reproduce it in the future when there is no such item present. Say a woman from another country wants a painting of herself from a photograph, but with updated clothes. Instead of a cotton t-shirt, she wants a fleece sweater. As an artist, I would have to reproduce what that particular fabric, texture, light absorption, resting weight, thickness, etc., in order for it to appear realistic, or that she was actually wearing the fleece sweater in the picture.
Correct, but none of this has anything to do with the shape of the earth. You can... In fact, I would argue, because you're so good at mentally visualizing things, you would also be able to create false models in your head that appear correct. Does that make sense? Like, you know how things work, therefore you are able to come up with models in your brain. That doesn't mean that the model that is internally consistent in your brain of a flat earth is consistent with actual reality. For instance, like, as an artist, you could probably, if I said, imagine a minotaur, as an artist, you would probably in your head be able to illustrate a minotaur very well and hold that picture in your mind very vividly. I have very bad sort of spatial and visual thinking. I can't keep images in my head very long. They're just like flashes and I can't hold on to them and keep them consistent. I think in words, right? Which is why I think I do this for a living. All right. I'm not the best orator in the world, but I think I explain myself relatively well and I'm able to have my mouth open and words spill out of it, right? But that doesn't make minotaurs real. Just because you can picture a minotaur in amazing detail with the most realistic anatomy you could imagine a minotaur to have doesn't make minotaurs real. It just means you're good at very specific artistic thinking. And that's a talent. That's fantastic. Like, I'm glad that there's all sorts of different people out here in the world with different ability levels and different skills that they're good at. Like, I wouldn't want to live in a world of all me's where no one can draw for shit and, like, no illustrations and beautiful art are made. But it doesn't mean that everything you can picture and create models of in your mind becomes the truth, right?
Without learning to observe, an artist like myself would always have to have said object present at the time of production. Any great artist can reproduce anything they've seen or drawn at least once before.
That's definitely not true. There are plenty of artists who would need to have some sort of model or some sort of reference material at hand at all times, and there's nothing wrong with that.
This is the power of the artistic mind, which sounds like autistic, and we already know that there are plenty examples of autistic people that are able to reproduce mind-boggling, beautiful works of art. But to stay on topic, as a young child,
This is something that they like to point out, too. They like to say that the moon can't create a shadow smaller than itself, but honestly, you can all do this experiment right in front of you. If you hold something up, especially sphere-shaped, depending on the point of light, there are times when shadows, if you have a shadow when you move the object away from the place in which it's casting a shadow, it can create a smaller shadow. I'd have to find a ball. Where do I have a ball other than below my feet? I don't have one on me, but you can do this. I think Cyman Dan did a demonstration of this at one point.
learning about the solar system, I, like many children, had many questions. However, I cannot help but feel like my questions were just a little different than the other children, and possibly more advanced. It took a lot of brainwashing and indoctrination via school, Hollywood, TV, and media, etc., to get me to forget these questions that I had when I was young. But since stepping into the flat earth knowledge, these questions and images have come flooding back to my mind, and I'm very excited to share it with you, because what I'm going to share with you today will totally debunk the spherical moon theory from here and forevermore.
Oh, this isn't even just flat Earth. This is flat moon. I am so on board for flat moon theory. This is like thinking 7 levels ahead of the flat earthers. Fuck your flat Earth. I'm going to the flat moon, bitch. Neil Armstrong, sailing through the space on a disc. I like it.
Before I begin, I want to let you know that the arts are one of the most important realms of learning in existence.
Terra
Science,
Supernova, thank you for
maths,
following.
And physics can be taught through the arts. When we are learning about intellectual sciences and things like arithmetic, physics, chemistry, etc., we are stimulating the left brain. But when we incorporate...
It's funny that he's talking about how smart he is and then bringing up left brain, right brain. I'm pretty sure the whole left brain, right brain thing has been pretty debunked at this point. Let's take a look, shall we? Left brain, right brain. True? Question mark? The left brain, right brain myth stems from the common idea that your dominant personality traits are related. Oh, shut up. Thank you to Danny Sume for a bit, with a link, like this, Hannah? I don't... Yes, that's exactly it. Neil Armstrong, in fact, owns armor exactly like that. The left brain, right brain myth stems from the common idea that your dominant personality traits are related to which side of your brain has more control. Supposedly, the left brain people are more logical, while right brain people are more creative. The popular idea has been around for more than 200 years and has proliferated in the age of BuzzFeed personality quizzes, but it simply isn't true. In reality, people use both sides of the brain equally, and logic and creativity are not mutually exclusive. So... this guy's full of shit. He's talking about how big-brained, right-brained he is or whatever. And really, it has nothing to do with that. It's fine to say you have artistic talent when you do. Clearly, this guy is an amazing artist. It has nothing to do with his qualifications to debunk the shape of the moon.
Incorporate the right brain, things like arts and music. Well, now we are engaging both hemispheres of the brain, and that empowers our subconscious to connect dots in such ways that present an opportunity to problem solve for a bigger picture.
There's nothing funny about the tools
People-
of capitalism.
Altered Rin, thank you for continuing your subscription. Look how flat this moon is. Wow. Let me click on that. Genuine question, since I haven't heard about this from flat earthers, please only reply if you're a flat earther or you know the answer that came from a flat earther. But what is the shape of the moon? Do they accept it's round as it can easily be seen? Not only that, but you can see shadows cast on the moon that are, you know, it's very silly. It's all very silly.
People who engage their left and right brain while learning also incorporate both while problem solving. This is why you may experience artsy people as an asset while
That's what I don't get. Well, I guess I do get it, because the shadows on the moon, because the sun is lighting it from a different angle, they don't believe that the moon, at least many of flat earthers, don't believe the moon is reflecting light from the sun. They believe it's its own light source. Of course, that isn't the case, but that's what they believe nonetheless.
participating in escape rooms or other creative games. Artsy people are able to think outside the box. In fact, the visual arts are so important and impactful to society that the great artists of
Yeah, the left brain, right brain thing is more like a pop cultural myth, not citing a study.
the day were actually given the subject matter to paint. The elite controlled the subject matter for the artists, the very same way they control a performing or a recording artist today. They give them the general outlines and then give the artist their leeway to put their spin on it, or to make it theirs, so to speak. Michelangelo detested the process he endured by his most famous work, the Sistine Chapel. He was actually ordered by the church to produce the masterpiece on the ceiling. He was given the subject matter, but it was Michelangelo that physically rendered and mixed the paints and painted it. And it is still influencing and inspiring people today. The imaginative power of an artist is unrivaled by any other character type. From my personal experience, it is sometimes a burden having such photographic, true-to-life memory. Haunting and horrible images that are not intended to be viewed stay with an artist long after observed. Scary, twisted, horrifying images are made realistic in nightmares or in waking life, as when someone is describing a surgery or an accident. The graphic reconstruction in the artist's mind is so real, he or she almost feels the pain right then and there. I'm sure most artists watching this can agree.
This is like a weird, just self-promotion video. Like, dude, get to the thing that you're trying to claim. Stop sucking your own dick in the video. I get it. You're a good artist. Come
This is
on.
why artists are dangerous
Get to the claims.
the system, and why the arts are given as optional school courses, or are not taken as seriously as other career choices. If two people told you their professions, one a math teacher, the other an arts teacher, you would probably judge the math teacher to be smarter, more wise, or more trustworthy.
No, I wouldn't. They're both teachers. Who cares? They just study different things. I recognize that the arts are important. No one wants to live in a world without art.
Dependable, or more professional, or even more deserving of your respect. And
We're almost to the point where you
which
said
is
to
weird,
skip to
because
anyway.
everyone can learn math and how to count numbers if they tried, or use a calculator. Yet no matter how hard someone who is not born with an artistic inclination may never be able to develop the talents it takes to render a family portrait.
See, I don't know if I agree with that, because regardless of where you start out artistically, it still takes years and years of practice to hone your abilities, right? Like, I'm not interested in doing illustration or anything like that. It would be cool to do, but I just don't have a passion for it in the way that some people do. So I'm not going to sit down and put in the hours of work every day in order to hone my craft. But I think most people if given the motivation to do so, could learn that like any other skill, right?
There's nothing
Like,
funny about
this
the
guy
tools of
didn't just
capitalism.
start out being an amazing artist. He had to work at it really hard. Like anything in this world, being an artist or whatever you might want to do involves a lot of practice and hard work. It's not necessarily just having an outright aptitude out of the womb. Tom G, 1010011010, 10 bits. Need more tinfoil for safety. True.
or a landscape, or the correct color, or
There's
the
nothing
moon.
funny about the tools of
And speak-
capitalism.
The Flower Girl 13, thank you for subscribing.
Speaking of the moon, allow me to now share the information that will close the case forever on the possibility or the falsity of the moon being a sphere.
Oh, good. I'm glad he's done, masturbating.
The moon is 100% absolutely not spherical, and any lunar eclipse
I mean, you can see it in that picture. So, disagree? I've also seen the moon in person at nighttime. It's in the upward direction, typically. You can see it. It's round.
proves it, and you can prove it too. All you need is a light source and two spheres. On the right, I'll be showing video footage of past lunar eclipses that we are all familiar with. And on the left, I will be showing what a shadow moving over a sphere actually looks like. A lunar eclipse is not, I repeat, is not a shadow of a sphere or anything else circular moving across a spherical object. How do I know? There are 4 critical points of observation everyone should be looking at, and I like to call these the conformation to surface factor, the shadow diffusion factor, the sine wave or S factor, and the reflected light factor. Firstly,
We're probably
going
going to need to look at some lunar eclipse stuff. Stuff that I don't necessarily know off the top of my head, but it's stuff that you can figure out by Googling it. What do you know? Lunar eclipse occurs when the moon moves into the Earth's shadow, so of course it is the Earth causing a shadow on the moon and thus making it not illuminate anymore, because of course the moon's light is a result of reflection of the sun's light off of its surface. Many flat earthers don't think that, but nonetheless it is reality.
Consistency of how a shadow naturally moves along varied surface types. This is the conformation factor. A shadow will conform to any shape that the surface takes, thus, in a way, revealing the true shape of an object. If a shadow moves along something
To an extent,
rigid like stairs, it will take the stairs' shape, revealing the level differential from step to step. If a shadow moves along a concave object like a bowl, the shadow will stretch and skew, revealing the concavity of the bowl. If a
okay.
shadow was to move over the surface of a sphere, it would stretch and skew in a spherical manner, wrapping and receding as a bevel.
Okay, but it's like really far away and you can't see the detail on it. You can't see the detail on the moon's surface. If you looked at it, actually, even if you looked at a telescope, it's a fucking shadow, so it's gonna be hard to see. You can't compare the Earth and the moon, which are very far away from each other, with a light source even further away that's fucking ginormous, to you putting a dowel over a bowl. It's not the same thing. Not to mention that this bowl is smooth and shiny, so it's going to reflect light differently than the moon, which is rough and sandy and cratery, and therefore it scatters light in all kinds of directions. It's not shiny like this. You're not going to get this sort of, like, defined resolution on the shadows.
And distorts along the sphere's surface. Note that this does not and has never happened on the surface of the moon during an eclipse. Which brings us to our next factor, the shadow diffusion factor. Note, the shadow is more crisp on the edge of the bowl than it is in the lowest portion of the bowl, and sharpens as it rises back up to the edge or the source of the shadow. Note also that on a sphere,
The shadow is most diffused or scattered around the edges as the sphere's surface recedes, and it is the most sharp or defined on the closest portion of the sphere. This is because the closer the source of the shadow is to the surface, the more defined its edges. The further the source of the shadow is from the surface, the larger and more faded or diffused it becomes. Another way to say this is if you place an object on a surface with a light source above, the object's shadow will appear most sharp when the object is at rest. But lift the object closer to its light source, and you will see the shadow lose its crisp edges and dull.
Yeah, but the Earth is... Let's look at the distance. Distance between Earth and Moon. Okay, so the Earth is 238,900 miles away from the Moon. Let's see if we can find a picture of this to scale. It would be helpful. So, the distance between the Earth and the Moon is this much, but the distance between, like, the edges of the Earth and the front of the Earth are not a huge difference, right? I'm trying to think of a way to explain this in a way that makes sense. The difference between the shadow being caused right here and the shadow being caused at the very equator is so minuscule compared to the actual distance between the Earth and the Moon that it's not going to make a difference. On top of that, the Earth also has atmosphere, which is going to affect light that sort of wraps around it, right? So it's not going to be the same unless that dowel has an atmosphere that's also sticking to it and can affect the refraction of light through it.
Or fade away, sometimes to the point where little to no shadow remains. This is the shadow diffusion factor.
Hello, Ming-U-R.
And in conjunction with the first factor, the conformation to the surface factor, the shadow not only rises and falls, stretches and skews with the surface, but also sharpens and dulls.
Okay, but like, the Earth is much bigger than the Moon, you get that, right? The Earth is huge compared to the Moon. The shadow is much bigger than the Moon. So you would need to get something to scale, and compared to that ball, oh god. Let's see. Earth and Moon size comparison. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Okay. So you would need a ball, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, like 10 times as big. I'm bad at estimating size, I'm not gonna lie to you. But that's why I looked something up. You're gonna need a ball quite a bit bigger to cast the shadow the way that you're trying to illustrate. It looks like, in fact, you have something smaller than the ball, which isn't the reality of the situation. Daddy Sume, no, Hannah, it looks big, so it big.
These two factors are almost all we need to find the true topography or shape of the Moon. Yet one factor is missing. This is called the sine wave factor, or S factor. Because the Moon is said to be a sphere, the shadow...
Once again, this is about the same size as this. You need something like 10 times bigger than this. Let's see, exactly, so I stopped saying incorrect information. How many times bigger is the Earth than the Moon? So we can get a rough estimate. 81. Wow, I was way off. So, in order to do this experiment correctly, you would need an item 81 times bigger than whatever you're using as the model for the Earth. This isn't going to give the same result, because A, your distance isn't even close to correct, and your size isn't close to correct. This is a pointless experiment you're doing, because nothing is to scale.
Shadow that is projected onto the Moon should also take on the characteristics of the sphere. This critical factor does not appear on the Moon's eclipses whatsoever.
Yeah, the shadow's fucking huge. The shadow's huge.
The sine wave factor, or the...
And actually, hold on, go back, let's look at this. It does seem to distort a little bit as it gets towards the edge. Do you see that shit? It's doing the thing he says it's not doing.
This critical factor...
See, this is my problem when I try and debunk this stuff. I assume from the outright that something like the observation they're making has some semblance of truth to it, when really I need to just check every single claim, because they'll outright lie about things you can fucking see.
Does not
Look at it distort, especially as it gets towards this
appear on the
edge.
moon's
It does. You can see it start to sort of wrap around the surface of the moon.
eclipses whatsoever.
Oh my god.
The sign
Is he just pretending not to fucking see
on the
it?
characteristics of the sphere. This critical factor does not appear on the moon's
You can see it doing it!
eclipses whatsoever. The sine
You can see it, like, wrap around!
wave factor, or the S factor, is what happens as an object, round or straight, spherical or bent, passes over a sphere's surface.
It's literally doing that, but at a different level, again, because the sizes are different, so the amount of curvature changes. For instance, because the object you're using to cast a shadow on this ball is smaller, the curvature is going to look much more severe, and because of the more curve, it's going to look more extreme when it does it. But the shadow of the Earth is doing that on the footage he's talking about. It just isn't as extreme because, of course, because of the size of the Earth, the curvature is very gradual, and therefore it looks a bit straighter, so the severity of the curve as it goes around the moon is going to be somewhat lessened.
As the shadow moves onto a sphere, it is wrapping
I don't know what the Pepsi logo was for.
around its curve. Starting from the outer edge and moving towards the middle, the shadow takes on the spherical contour and bends upward at its height, then falls backwards in a barrel-distorted manner. The shadow will always follow the closest edge due to perspective. The shadow will continue to create the S shape until it reaches the halfway point. As the shadow moves beyond the halfway point, it begins to bevel outward again in a barrel distortion manner. When a shadow moves along a 3D sphere, the center or closest part of the sphere to the observer is the most flat, and the shadow's shape and size the most true to life. The sphere will never be flat, but the bigger the sphere is, the less acute the angle of its curvature. So, because the innermost portion of the sphere is the closest to the observer, the less curvature is observed. However, when we observe any lunar eclipse, there is no wrapping, stretching, skewing, sharpening, or dulling of the shadow.
Okay, for one thing, I would need to see exactly where your light source is on the specific one you're doing right here, because I'm just now realizing that you might just literally have a room light on, which diffuses itself quite differently than the sun. And secondly, again, the sizes are completely wrong, the distances are all wrong.
In fact, every single lunar eclipse looks as if there is one flat disk
No, it doesn't, though. You can see it distort
moving
in this
across another
footage.
flat disk. As the circular shadow moves along the moon, it maintains its circular shape the whole way at the same pace.
It doesn't, though. You can see it speed up and slow down, particularly as it gets a little red over this area.
Its circular shape the whole way at the same pace.
Speeds up a little bit,
No stretching,
slows back down.
no skewing, no sharpening or dulling. Hopefully you all understood that, as it was quite hard for me to put into words. Those three factors are good enough for us to see that the moon is not a sphere, but one factor is needed to realize the moon's surroundings, and that's reflected light. When another object under the same light source is in close proximity of the object in question, i.e. the moon, it should have light bouncing off of the Earth and reflecting onto the moon.
The Earth isn't very reflective, though. The Earth is covered in mostly water, which on the ocean is rough and is going to not reflect directly out, but it's going to diffuse light. We also have an atmosphere, which does things to radiation, light being a type of radiation. And then, of course, you have the ground, which is 30% of the Earth, And that's not very reflective at all.
When another object under the same light source
This does count as that's not how science works. Fuck this. That's not how science works.
is in close proximity of the object in question, it should have light bouncing off and reflecting onto it. What I mean is this. The closer another object comes to the sphere, the brighter the light it's reflecting will appear. In the made-up heliocentric lie, they tell us that the moon is reflecting the light to the Earth.
It is.
But what about the bigger object, the Earth? Does it reflect and bounce light to the moon?
Let's take a look, shall we? For one thing, as I already discussed, the Earth's surface isn't as reflective as the moon due to a variety of factors. But you know how I know the Earth does reflect some amount of light? Here's a fun one. See this photo? You can only see the Earth because it's reflecting light, you dumb fuck. That's how vision works. Yes, the Earth is probably reflecting some negligible amount of light onto the moon. Compared to the sun, though, not very much. But, seeing as though you can in fact see Earth from the moon, yes, some light does reflect from the Earth to the moon. That's why you can see it. That's how visible light works. Light reflects from an object, hits the cones and rods in your eye, travels down your optic nerve to your brain, where your brain deciphers the signals. Jesus.
It should, but it doesn't. Because if it did,
The last one was not real that I looked at, but the one that I looked at first was indeed real.
we would then have no new moon phase, and instead more of a dull moon phase, or a dim moon.
Here's the kitty. Baja just sent me a picture. Hold on, let me... Hopefully she's feeling comfy.
Phase. Meaning, as the moon wanes to darkness, it should then be illuminated by the Earth.
Again, a negligible amount of light is coming off of the Earth. And also, I would imagine because of the fact that it is a lunar eclipse, what is happening is the Earth is coming between the moon and the sun. That means that the face that is facing the moon is not facing the sun, right? You understand that, right? So even though a negligible amount of light is reflected off the Earth's surface in the first place, it's also not facing the sun at the point that the lunar eclipse is happening. So it's not going to be reflecting much light at all, even relative to the little amount that it does reflect.
We should still be able to see the same face of the moon that we see every day, because the moon is always facing us. However, it should be dimmer and not luminous, because the Earth should reflect its massive light towards the dark moon.
No, because again, the Earth is between the sun and the moon, meaning the face of the Earth that is facing the moon is not facing the sun, it's on the opposite side. Therefore, even the light that normally is reflected off the surface of the Earth is not being reflected as much because it's not face on with the sun. The sun is behind it.
Especially when the moon is further and closer to the Earth.
Like, imagine if I wish I had a flashlight in here. Like, let's say I took this piece of paper that has bingo stuff on it, and I shined a flashlight this way, and I was trying to say, well, nothing's right because this side isn't reflecting light. Well, you're not shining light on that side. You'd have to wheel it around to this side in order for it to reflect light. That's what you're doing here. You're completely missing the fact that the Earth is not facing the sun on the side that is facing the moon.
On its supposed elliptical path, it should brighten and dim in its new moon phase. I repeat, Speaking exclusively from new moon to new moon, the moon itself should still be visible on that new moon phase, transitioning from dim to slightly brighter, back to dim, as the moon moves in its elliptical orbit. The object also should reflect the color of its surface and the color of its light source. A gold chain will reflect gold. A green ball will bounce green light, and its reflection on the object will be green. The sun's light is yellow or warm, while the moon's light is blue and cool.
No. The moon does not reflect cold light. Light, by definition, cannot be cold. Light is radiation. You cannot have cold light. That's not how anything works.
That's right, capitalistic propaganda.
Hold on. Someone followed. Thank you to, Michaelise, whichever. Thank you for following. The moon does not create its own cold light. The moon reflects light from the sun.
Astronauts say the moon is black and white, whatever that means. But if that means it's a scale of grays running from white to black, then it is impossible for the moon to change the sun's light from a warm color and temperature to a cool color and temperature.
It doesn't. It doesn't do those things. What are you talking about?
Yes, the moon's light is colder than the moon's shade.
No. What's happening is, this is a thing called, I believe, radiative cooling or radiative heating. And what happens is, this is something flat earthers will do. They'll take a thermometer, whether it be one of the ones with a trigger or one of the ones without, and they'll say, look over here in the shade, it's warmer under this tree in the shade from the moon's light, but out here where there's no shade, it's colder, so the moon's light is cold. No, it's because the tree or whatever is creating the shade is blocking heat from rising into the atmosphere. Let's take a look. Radiative warming. Radiative warming. Maybe it's cooling. No, I'm pretty sure it's radiative warming in shade. Doot. Let's just see if we can find the actual debunk of it so we can find out the actual name. Why is, god damn it, cooler in moonlight? This should do a debunk. There we go. What is radiational cooling? That's what it is. Thank you very much. It's not as cool because, for instance, if there are clouds in the shade, causing the shade rather, the air has more difficulty, the warm air rising through whatever obstruction it might be, whether it's a tree or a cloud or whatever, making it warmer under what would be considered the shade. Under what seems to be clear, more heat escapes from the Earth into space due to absence of cloud barrier. This leads to cooler temperatures at surface. The thing is, they could show this to be the case if they knew how science worked, and they were able to use, like, controls and try and look at, oh, let's look at this surface. How do I put this? Let's say you took a surface and you first measured it under no shade, and then you measured it again with shade, but briefly after it was. You could show this to be false. And they've had this explained to them time and time again. But no matter what, they continue to bring this bullshit moon does cold light thing out, and I don't get it.
I can understand the moon cooling down the sun's rays and making it less hot, but in no way is it possible for it to actually make the sun's rays colder.
Correct, because that's not how anything works. That's not even how heat works. You can have heat, but there's no such thing as... How do I put this, too? Heat exists. If you open a window in your house and it's winter time, you're not letting the cold in. What you're doing is making the heat leave, because the way temperature works is it always moves from areas of warmer to cooler, because heat is a property of the energy of the atoms at play, right? So you can make things cooler by transferring that heat elsewhere, but you can't create cool in and of itself, right?
Than the shade at night.
That's why you can, like, light a fire and get warmer, because you're creating a chemical reaction that excites stuff in the fire, in the stuff that's burning. Burning is a chemical reaction, but you can't create a cold fire, right?
Meaning, if you stepped into the moonlight at night, the temperature of the sun's rays reflecting off the surface of the moon and onto your face, or thermometer, should be greatly reduced, but not colder than if there was no moon at all.
It's not the case. It's not the case. It's not the case. What you need to do is do the same experiment. What you need to do is 2 locations. Something under a tree where there's shade, and something where there's no shade. Take temperature readings from under the tree and out of the tree. Obviously, even on a night with the moon, you're going to find that under the tree is probably warmer, again, because of the air not being able to escape into the atmosphere as easily. Now, you need to do this experiment on a night with no moon, no moonlight, and you'll find exactly the same thing. Because the moonlight is not what's causing things to get cooler. It's the fact that heat is not escaping as easily from the shaded areas. You could do this. Go and do it. It would be very easy. But you won't.
When the moon comes out at night, the temperature drops because of the moon's light. This has been
No! The temperature drops at night because the sun is no longer shining on the surface on which we live.
confirmed by many experiments using digital thermometers.
From people who do not understand how this cooling works. Jesus Christ.
But staying on course, there is no sign of a reflected light being thrown onto the moon by Earth. What does this mean?
It means the Earth isn't very reflective, and also during, once again, eclipses, the side of the Earth that's facing the moon is not, in fact, facing the sun, so it's not reflecting much light at all.
This means that the new moon has actually disappeared. While the moon is waxing and waning, we can see the rest of the moon that is not illuminated. However, when there is a new moon, or no sunlight being reflected, we do not see a dim spherical object traversing our sky. In fact, in the daytime, we should still see a dim object traversing the sky, but we have never seen either of these things in our realities. Can you ever remember seeing a dim, non-luminous moon high in the sky at the new moon phase? I repeat, at the new moon phase.
Let's look into this. Why don't you see the moon during new moon? The new moon occurs when the moon is between the sun and the earth. The far side of the moon is in full sunlight, and near the side of the moon receives no sunlight. The new moon is also in the daytime sky. Sunlight illuminates the atmosphere so much that the dark face of the moon can't be seen. Took 5 seconds to Google that. And by the way, the same reason that you can't see the moon during the new moon is the same reason you can't see light being reflected from the surface of the Earth to the moon during a lunar eclipse. That being, the side that is facing the moon is not facing the sun, therefore reflects no light from it. For a guy who says he has, like, such a galaxy brain for visualizing things, he sure doesn't understand light sources and that they need to be facing a thing, shooting light at it in order to reflect that light.
Not while it's waxing or waning, and not when it's near full. Have you ever seen a dim, non-luminous moon high in the sky at the new moon phase? Now that this information is being brought to light, you will never be able to help but notice something you've never noticed before. That on an eclipse, the shadow
A reflector
has never
can only
stretched.
be flat or concave? A reflector can only be flat or concave. Something is making me think that that's not the case. Apparently he's never done Art of a Discotheque.
Along the surface of a spherical moon. No stretching, no skewing, no sharpening in or fading away. Not obscured and distorted in sine wave-like motions. No light reflecting onto the moon from Earth. Nothing. Not a single shred of evidence remains that the moon is a spherical body orbiting
It's literally doing the thing on both sides.
around or
There's
above
nothing
our
funny
Earth.
about the tools of capitalism.
Dude spanking dudes with one bit. That sounds like a mix between a witch and a Minecraft villager.
This 100% discounts and debunks any further argument or perspectives that hold to our moon being a sphere in the sky or reflecting the sun's light. This information is in line with the laws of the reflector. The reflector can only reflect light brilliantly if the surface of the reflector is concave.
Okay, no, though. The moon is not a smooth ball. It's not reflecting things like that. It's reflecting from its surface because of the material that the moon is made out of. And the fact that it's a rough surface. It's fine. Moon reflecting light. You don't need to have something be smooth and shiny and concave in order for it to reflect. I don't understand where he's getting that concept. Like, let me find something convex. Convex. Like, for instance, these are convex. I doubt this is going to be picked up by the camera. I apologize. I didn't prepare something for this. But I can still, even if I cover up this side with my hand entirely, the convex side of these, the Bones glasses, still reflect light. I can see the monitor. In fact, I'll look in the reflection of these glasses that are concave, and next time a picture comes up, I'll tell you what it is without looking directly at the screen.
But the outside of the sphere is convex, and convex surfaces only reflect a portion of the light.
Okay, it looks like a bunch of horizontal lines with some text above, and... oh, it's horizontal lines, and then on one side, it's a blue curved line with a bunch of other lines forming a triangle like the Death Star laser. Hey! There we go, right there. These are concave, but I could still see light reflected from it. Do you understand? Jesus.
Back to the viewer's eye. But a concave surface reaccumulates the spreading light, or reconcentrates the light back to the observer's eye, whereas the convex surface, like the surface of a ball, further scatters the light. If the moon were over 250,000...
And again, that's fine. The moon is smaller than the Earth. Even if it scatters the light outward, it's still gonna hit the Earth, a lot of it. Because again, the moon is smaller than the Earth! You fool!
miles away, then we would only see a portion of the moon, which we would call the hot spot or the bright spot.
Hot spots don't happen on rough surfaces. They only happen on reflective surfaces. Hold on, let me show you. Hot spot. reflective ball. Okay? There's a hot spot because this is a polished ball. So it does have a hot spot. But on a surface that is rough, like the moon, for instance, a tennis ball reflective, you can have it illuminated and it doesn't have a hot spot because it's rough, right? This one has a little bit of one, but even then, it's not a hot spot. It just has a slightly brighter section there, and I think that's because the light source is very close. But you see this all the time in your day-to-day life. Anything that you're able to see is reflecting light. When we say it reflects light, we aren't saying it's literally a mirror. We're saying that it is reflecting enough light to illuminate. This is a thing that happens every day. See? This is like a fluorescent shoe. It's reflecting a lot of bright, vivid light. But there's no hot spot because it's rough and it makes light go off in all sorts of different directions. I don't understand why, as an artist, you don't get that it's not between absolutely no reflection and a smooth reflective surface. There are gradients to these things. You can have all kinds of reflections that aren't literally mirrors.
Or the highlight of the sphere.
Bumble Homestead
But there
with
are no hotspots or
Bumble Homestead with 100 bits. Galaxy Brain Art Guy hasn't seen the mirror in an Arna Fellini portrait. I'm not even sure what that is. This is what happens when you reflect no light, Sushi Mom says. And then there's a link. Oh, it's the black. Yeah, the black. That's like the blackest black. Yeah. If you literally reflect no light, you just can't see it. Anything.
highlights or bright points on the sphere of the moon.
Correct, because there are no points on the moon that are making the light all converge. When you get a bright spot, typically it's because there's something on the surface it's usually a very smooth surface, and there's something about the surface that's causing light to sort of congregate at a point. So a bunch of light is hitting your eye from that spot. But the moon isn't like that. It's rough. It's powdery. It has craters all over it, so the light's going in a lot of different directions, but it still is coming off of it nonetheless, and that's why you can see it illuminated.
Indicating the sun's direction. Instead, we have a perfectly evenly lit, luminescent moon that gives us cold, blue light.
No.
In fact, when we look at a full moon, it appears to be flat, because the edges of the moon are just as bright as the center or any other part on a full moon.
That's because it's being lit not only at the section that we can see, but like around it, because the sun is huge. Hold on, let me show you. Moon reflecting sunlight. Do-do-do-do. So the sun can be over here, for instance, and the sun, of course, none of this is to scale, but it's huge, and it's casting so much light towards both the Earth and the moon that its light can be illuminating even from sections we don't necessarily see, right? Because the moon's relative position to the sun is going to change based upon where it is in its rotation around the Earth. Like that, see? This is a eclipse, but you get the idea. The sun's fucking huge. It shines light all over the fucking place. These people. Thank you to Deep Southern Man for hosting. Moon size compared to Earth. Moon size compared to sun. This is going to be ridiculous. Sun, Earth, Moon. Of course, the distance is completely off. But the sun is huge. It lights our whole goddamn solar system. Because you can see it from just about everywhere in our solar system. Unless you're literally being blocked by something. Jesus. So the only parts of the moon that are not being illuminated by the sun are literally the parts that are being blocked by either its own surface, because again, it is a sphere, so some parts of it are inevitably going to be blocked, or when an eclipse happens and the Earth is in the way.
Now that your eyes are opened to the physics and the facts, what will you do?
Hey, Deep Southern Man, I'm doing good.
Will you choose to continue believing this lie, or observe it for yourself? Anybody can do it. Just go outside and look up. And in case you're wondering about what Neil deGrasse Tyson has to say on the matter, just look how he debunked himself. He went on social media, yes, supposedly the world's leading astrophysicist.
I don't know if he's the world's leading astrophysicist. I definitely don't think that's the case. He's one of the world's best-known science communicators, and he is, in fact, an astrophysicist. I think he's, was the chair of the New York... let me look. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson was his career. I don't know what he's doing now. YouTube series, he does Star Talk. I'm looking for when he started. There we go. He's the president and chairman on the board of the Planetary Society, which is a organization. The Planetary Society is an American internationally active non-governmental non-profit foundation. Involves research, public outreach, political advocacy for engineering products related to astronomy, planetary science, and space exploration. It was founded in 1980 by Carl Sagan. Neil deGrasse Tyson was friends with Carl Sagan. He has degrees from Harvard, the University of Austin. He got his PhD at Columbia. The guy's a smart dude.
Anyway, went on social media and posted this ridiculous photo of what he thinks the shadow of a flat Earth would look like on the moon.
He's making fun of you. It's not meant to be an accurate representation of your model. He's making fun of you people.
Now, of course, he believes that the moon is a sphere, or at least that's what he says. But if that's the case, then why is there no stretching or skewing of this shadow?
It's literally just a meme making fun of you. Don't analyze it too hard. You'll hurt your brain. It's just literally making fun of you.
Once again, it goes to show you how important it is to be observant and to rely on your own senses.
I'm so observant, I can't tell when someone is making a sarcastic tweet about my bizarre belief system. I take it 100% seriously. Genius.
It also displays
Hey, Drakewing.
the
Welcome.
innate sense for acute observation to a true artist.
True artist, indeed.
We have
A bullshit artist.
to combine both worlds, science and spirit.
The Life of Mal asks for a link to this. Yeah, sure. Link in the chat if you want it for some reason.
Spirituality, the abstract and the literal, the arts and the politics, the left and the right brain.
Left and right brain is bullshit. That's a pop cultural myth.
We must paint a whole picture in order to see truth in anything. Keep your eyes wide open. And once again, this is Masterpiece. Peace, power, and protection.
Ooh, boy. For the fact that he took
There's nothing
7
funny
whole
about
minutes
proving
to
capitalism.
like mentally masturbate himself over his artistic ability, he really doesn't have the ability to imagine incredibly large objects.